Welcome back, everyone, to Watcher of All Things. My name is Kiki, and this is my podcast where I talk movies, TV shows, and all things entertainment. And today is a big one. The much anticipated. It's only been 3 weeks that we've been waiting to talk about this movie. It is episode 24, and we are talking Kinds of Kindness. And it might be a shorter one today. It is the holiday weekend, so I'm packing and getting ready to actually leave for the weekend. But today, I'm first of all getting my hip frozen this morning, so that's kind of wild to see if it's a joint issue in my hip. They have to, they're gonna freeze it, and if the pain goes away, then they know I have a problem with my hip joint. So that's really fun. But tonight, I'm going to Ottawa Jazz Festival, and I am seeing Leve, which I'm very excited for. I have seriously enjoyed her music for about a year now. I think I first heard her last summer. Just good stuff. She does really good jazz that keeps me calm, but for some reason I can only listen to it when it's bad weather. I can't listen to it when it's nice outside, so maybe that's a compliment to her. I have no clue, but it is the long weekend. I'm going to be going away for the weekend, visiting my girlfriend, which I'm excited about. A much needed holiday weekend. But yeah, finally saw Kinds of Kindness last night. I've watched a few other things this week, which I will talk about, of course. You can bounce around in this episode. There are timestamps below in the description and info about this episode. So if you want to avoid all Kinds of Kindness spoilers, you can just listen to the non-spoiler section. But if you want to just stick to the news and what else I watched and you don't want to know anything about Kinds of Kindness, you can absolutely do that. But before we get to Kinds of Kindness, there is lots of news to get to, so let's get right into it. The first story comes from Variety, who wrote an article this week saying that The Boys co-creator says film trilogy version from Adam McKay originally got axed in the pre-MCU Hollywood. First movie was fully written and it was really cool stuff. So The Boys creator and illustrator Derek Robertson recently confirmed to Rolling Stone that an early attempt to bring the comic book series to screen was through a film trilogy from director Adam McKay. So Adam McKay you might know from The Big Short, Don't Look Up. He worked on Succession with Will Ferrell, like they were both producers, I believe, and I think he doesn't have a hand in the current series, sorry, but it's Adam McKay. I think he's literally like an Oscar winner. This was back in 2008 that he was originally working on The Boys, and it was going to be a film trilogy, so it all started with Seth Rogen, longtime collaborator Evan Goldberg, got their hands on the first issue of The Boys comic book, and they really wanted to do something with it, so they went to Sony, and they said, you guys should make this. Sony did buy the rights to the property, which went through a series of incarnations over a decade before ending up back in the hands of Rogen, Goldberg, and showrunner Eric Kripke, who's currently working on it. But for a while, director Adam McKay was trying to turn The Boys into a trilogy of movies. The first one went as far as a finished screenplay, but he wasn't really able to get it greenlighted in a pre-Hollywood MCU. Robertson said, I wouldn't change how it worked out because the show is amazing, but McKay was doing really cool stuff. It just came down to it being 2008, not 2018. I don't think they were ready for it yet. This seems like, 2008, you have to think, that's the year that Iron Man came out. So the whole MCU and doing wild comic book things just was not a possibility. They're not exaggerating when they say the world was not ready for that yet, because it wasn't. It truly wasn't. We were not used to the idea of, we want different comic book things. It was like getting a solid comic book property was hard enough. Like we really only had Spider-Man and the first Batman Begins, but people need to remember all through the 90s, comic book movies did not do generally well. Like there was 2 Batman movies that did poorly. Batman Returns was good, but went through so much troubles that is this an adult movie? This isn't for kids. So you have to keep all this context in mind. And now, in 2024, if the TV show hadn't existed, I'm sure Adam McKay would get this greenlit in a second. It is a very different time that we live in now. A very interesting story, though, because I think Adam McKay's properties do have a lot of great comedy in them, but they are also very deep stories. Like, maybe not Don't Look Up. That kind of bashes you over the head with its themes and is not nonchalant whatsoever. I don't know. The Big Short is one of the most entertaining and, complex stories that I don't really care about all of the finance stuff. It's just the way that it tells a story of literally a world crumbling around people and how many people lose their homes, everything they have, but then there's these people that are benefiting off of all of this. Like, just such a wild story. I don't know, it is interesting to think about an alternate universe where we get the boys in a trilogy format versus what we have now, which is 4 seasons that are all really solid. I really like all 4 seasons, at least season 4 so far. I haven't watched episode 5 yet, which just came out last night, but I was at a screening of Kinds of. But I, for the most part, like Adam McKay's stuff, so it would have been very interesting to see what that would have looked like. Now, speaking of new properties that will be moving forward and are bringing things back, Eddie Murphy has started work on Shrek 5 and says Donkey is also going to have his own movie. Right away, I'm rolling my eyes, shaking my head. I hate this already. We do not need any more Shrek movies. 1 and 2 are absolutely perfect movies, in my opinion. I think Shrek 1 and Shrek 2 are so lightning in a bottle type films that it cannot get any better. This is not what I want to be reading on my Friday morning right now. I do not want to be hearing that we're going to milk another IP for all that it's worth, and we're going to do spin-offs. We don't need a cinematic Shrek universe, okay? Murphy said he thinks the next Shrek movie is coming out in 2025 and adds, "We're doing a Donkey one next." He said, "We started doing Shrek 5 4 or 5 months ago. I recorded the first act and we'll be doing it this year. We'll finish it up." A rep for Universal did not immediately respond to people's request for comment. So this might just be Eddie Murphy kind of talking random nonsense. I'm not sure, but I know a Shrek movie. I know. See how flustered I'm getting about this, because I've watched Shrek 1 and Shrek 2 a billion times as a child. I remember on Shrek 2 the Far, Far Away Idol DVD part, and that was like the OG post-credit scene. But it drives me crazy. Who wants this? Nobody wants this. We don't need another Shrek movie. 1 and 2 were so phenomenal, and they kind of just got progressively okay after 2. I don't know. Shrek the Third is fine. Like, I remember seeing it in theaters as a kid, and I was like, okay, this is not as much fun. And then there's a 4th, right? It's like Happily Ever After or whatever. And I remember not liking the 4th one. So I don't really see a point in this. I think Eddie Murphy is kind of just going back to his old IPs. Like, you have the Beverly Hills Cop Axel F coming out on Netflix and in theaters in a couple weeks, I think, or next week, maybe July 7th. And the fact that they're going back to Shrek as well, I just hate this of let's go back to all of our IPs and milk them for what they're worth and all these Lego sequels. I think in certain aspects, like a Top Gun Maverick, it works when it's just one film and it's like 20 years later. But this Shrek thing, I feel like we haven't had enough distance from Shrek. If it was a reimagining in like 50 years, that would be cool. But I think this is a total waste of time. Let's move on to something that brought me joy this week. Let's talk enough about these depressing things. Actually, the Adam McKay story isn't depressing. I think it's just a fun bit of insider knowledge that was good. But we have tons of behind the scenes photos and videos of David Corenswet on the Superman set and just the Superman set as a whole. That first reveal photo of his suit, I liked it, but I thought the colors didn't pop enough. But just looking at him on set, I know there's going to be like digital additions to the cinematography and stuff like that and the color grading, but his suit looks so good. And I mean, I would skip forward like 3 minutes if you don't want to know anything about the movie going in, because the behind the set photos did show lots of characters. I'll say a few of them, but I won't say anything of what I think is happening in the story, and I've been kind of avoiding also theories about what's happening in the stories because I don't want to just go into the movie having it ruined, and I think it's a little much when we're just getting behind the scenes photos every single day. Like, I'm happy to see one, and that's it, but the fact that we pretty much saw an entire scene getting filmed and got photos of the entire scene is a little annoying. Okay, here, I'm going to say who was in this scene, and I want people to skip forward if they don't want to know. So we see Superman, we see Mr. Fantastic, or what's his name? Mr. Terrific, that's it. Sorry, I had no clue who he was, but he looks really cool, and I've seen the Alex Ross drawings of him from the comics, and he looks identical. We see the entire Daily Planet team. We see Frank Grillo as Rick Flag Sr., as well as Ultraman, who I think in the comics is kind of like Black Noir from The Boys in that they are a clone of Superman or Homelander, so it might be Bizarro under there. I'm not sure. But really cool. You see Superman getting arrested, which is like a staple of every movie pretty much. He has to get arrested to show his humanity. Looks really great though. They're filming in Cleveland as Metropolis, and I like the designs of every character. I think James Gunn just does really well with all of his designs, and I think like the Guardians movies, all the costumes are super top notch, and it's the same costume designer as those films. I'm really happy and looking forward to this. I think David Corenswet as Superman is phenomenal. He looks so good. Even his Clark Kent broccoli haircut is, although he looks kind of like a TikToker, it actually makes sense because he can't look like Superman, so he has like curly hair, but his hair is just so complicated and different from when he's Superman that I was blown away. And there's like Superman merchandise in universe and stuff like that. I really liked all that. I was very happy, and I think this looks really good. I'm really looking forward to this movie. I think every time there's new information or new anything, the new suit, new images, new casting news, it just gets me more excited. I feel like this is going to be a really good Superman movie, and I think David Corenswet is going to do an outstanding job, especially after watching him in The Greatest Hits, this film that he did last year. He's really good in that, and he has a very like minimal role as the dead boyfriend, but I think he is just a very, I don't know, vulnerable and available performer, and he seems very honest and humane. Some more good news. Andor Season 2 is apparently going to have Ben Mendelsohn come back as Orson Krennic, who he played in Star Wars Rogue One. And you have to remember that Andor is leading directly into the Rogue One movie. So at first I think they said it was going to be 5 seasons, and now I think it might just be 2, which I think is true, or I dreamt that. I can't remember. I think that's really cool. I think Ben Mendelsohn is obviously a great actor. He was wasted in the Marvel Universe, especially in Secret Invasion. What was that show? Secret Wars, Secret Invasion. That show was just terrible, but this is really cool. The whole idea of season 2 of Andor is, like I said, leading right into Rogue One, so they're gonna have all these recognizable characters that we know from other things, so I'm very much looking forward to him coming back. I really wonder who else we're gonna get. Are we gonna see a Darth Vader? Are we gonna see Mads Mikkelsen come back? Felicity Jones as Jyn Erso? Donnie Yen? I don't know, but I loved Andor Season 1. That was one of my favorite shows of 2022. I can't remember when Season 1 came out. It was that 2022, 2023. The problem is when you're a student, you just like gauge the years by the school year. So when I was in my 5th year of university, Andor came out, and I was nuts about it. I absolutely loved it. Stellan Skarsgård, phenomenal in that show. Diego Luna, amazing. Oh, also the Adria Aroha, what's her name? From Hitman. She's an Andor. I completely forgot she's an Andor, and she's so good in that show. So Andor, I think it's coming out next year or maybe later this year. I can't remember if they even set a release date. Maybe later this year, but my guess would be probably spring next year. And I think that show is just going to be even better season 2 now that they know what worked and maybe what didn't. People are very open to this type of Star Wars property, so that's going to be really good. Finally, last piece of news. I said I would talk about it last week, but we got the casting announcement for Batman the Caped Crusader last week, and we got the trailer this week, and I will say I was deeply impressed. This looks really good. The synopsis is just, in the grim Gotham City, affluent philanthropist, Jesus Christ, Bruce Wayne goes beyond his humane capabilities and transforms into an enigmatic figure, Batman. His crusade for justice brings in unexpected allies, but his actions also lead to perilous consequences. Comes out August 1st, 2024. I like it. I like the character designs. Like we see Firefly, Harley Quinn, Two-Face. I think the Batman suit in general just looks really good. They're going for a big ears Batman, which is always okay in my books. I love the short stubby ears, but the cowl with the long ears also looks awesome. This just looks really great. I like the animation style. I like the time it's set. Like I said last week, 1940s is a really interesting time to do a Batman story. So I'm seriously looking forward to this. I cannot wait for August 1st. If it drops all on the same day, I'm absolutely going to binge it and do an episode on it. You can bet your ass I'm not going to miss that. I've already watched season 3 of The Bear in a day and a half. So you already bet I can watch 10 episodes of Batman the Caped Crusader in like 2 days and do an episode on it. That looks really good. I have to say, Mr. Linklater, Hamish Linklater, who's doing the voice of Batman, Hearing him in the trailer, it's grown on me a little. I still think he sounds like someone trying to do a Batman voice, and it's not natural like it is for a Val Kilmer or a Robert Pattinson or even Michael Keaton. I think his Batman voice is also very good. Like, it's just a quiet kind of whisper compared to him, who it sounds like someone really trying to lower their voice to not be recognizable. But I have to say, it grew on me through the trailer, so I'm very much looking forward to that. Okay, I'm going to wrap up the news there because I want to get to Kinds of Kindness because there's just so much to talk about in this movie. Again, there's going to be timestamps below if you want to hear only non-spoilers about Kinds of Kindness, because you don't want it spoiled, of course. Just listen to that and then you can jump into what else I watched. All that good stuff is going to be below. If you want to avoid all of Kinds of Kindness, just skip ahead to what else I watched. All right, let's get into it. It's been 3 weeks in the making. Let's do this. Kinds of Kindness is a 2024 comedy drama that's 2 hours and 45 minutes. It currently has 72% on Rotten Tomatoes with a 69% audience score. It got 4 out of 5 from Empire Magazine. It has a 7 out of 10 IMDb rating. Google's in a nutshell is claustrophobic, shocking, and abusive. It is directed by Yorgos Lanthimos, of course, distributed by Searchlight Pictures. It had a budget of $15 million, which is just wonderful. Cinematography by Robbie Ryan. The music was by Jerskin Fendrix, which the music is particularly an aspect I freaking loved in this movie. The synopsis: 3 stories revolve around a man who tries to take control of his own life, a policeman whose wife seems like a different person, a woman who searches for someone with a special ability. Sorry, the 3 stories are a man who tries to take control of his own life, a policeman, and a woman who searches for someone. A very unique story. The fact that it's a $15 million budget is really cool. Wasn't Hitman made for like $8 million? This is made for $15 million. I think they should just let Yorgos Lanthimos do as much as he wants for as little as he wants. Okay, so the cast. We have Emily Stone, or Emma Stone, but I think she's trying to go by Emily Stone now, as Rita, Liz, and Emily. Jesse Plemons as Robert, Daniel, and Andrew. Willem Dafoe as Raymond, George, and Omi. Margaret Qualley as Vivian, Martha, and Ruth/Rebecca. Hong Cho as Sarah, Sharon, and Aka. Mamadou Athie as Will, Neil, Morg Nurse. Joe Alwyn as Collectibles Appraiser, Passenger, and Joe. Hunter Schafer as Anna. So it's funny that in 2 of the stories, Emily Stone and Joe Alwyn just play people with their own name. So non-spoilers. Let's stick to non-spoilers first because this is a crazy movie. This movie is just Yorgos letting himself run wild in the most fun way. There aren't many people who can make a movie like him, I think. There's not much other stuff that I see similarities in, especially after watching Poor Things and then going to this. There really isn't many people like this. There's such a freshness and originality to his storytelling skills. It's strange, it's super meticulous, it's hilarious, it's gruesome, but in the end, a movie that gives 3 examples of love, acceptance, and dedication, but it's also about abuse and control. It's a very dark movie in some senses, and that's only stuff that I can really talk about in spoilers. So let me just start with the cast first. Emily Stone, she's great in all 3 stories. Jesse Plemons is really the show stealer, I think, in this movie. He's the main character of the first story, but he takes a bit less focus in story 2 and 3. He's still a very important part of the other stories. Willem Dafoe is kind of a sub-character in all 3. He's a background, and he's batshit in, especially 1 and 2. Margaret Qualley, she's very good. Hong Cho is very good as well. I mean, the whole cast is just very good. Of the main cast that I listed, Hunter Schafer's the only one that I thought maybe she would be more involved in the story, but she's only in the 3rd one, and for maybe 10 minutes, I don't know. I really enjoyed the originality of all 3 stories, and I immediately thought of Black Mirror when I came out of the movie. They all felt super dialogue-driven Black Mirror episodes, whereas I think Black Mirror revolves way more around its premises and the events that happen. What I really liked about this movie is just the dialogue and how controlled the chaos feels. I mean, I saw someone on Letterboxd reference Wes Anderson, and they were getting lit up in the comments like, oh, you've never seen anyone do an anthology film before? But I actually get what they mean, because in one of the early episodes I talked about that every director has a movie where they just go fully for their vision and their niche. this movie might not be Yorgos going like that to the full, but it certainly feels like he was just entirely dependent on his style, which I loved. And it doesn't feel like it blows up in his face like Asteroid City did for Wes Anderson. You know, Asteroid City felt so measured. It didn't feel human. It felt very Wes Anderson, just being almost too focused on his own style, and only really people who enjoy that are going to enjoy it. Whereas this felt like Yorgos really embracing his own style, and I really enjoyed that about it. It's meticulously directed. It has a certain visual style, and it's an anthology movie like The French Dispatch. So I really loved it, and I get what that person was saying, that, oh, it reminds me of Wes Anderson. I think they're correct. I'm going to go story by story and non-spoilers first, and then I'll give some overall thoughts. So let's go with story one. Okay, so story one, Jesse Plemons is playing Robert, who is apparently an auctioneer that works for Willem Dafoe, who's his boss. But it's like, it's so much more than that. It's a story about like love and control, but also just like comfort in routine. He loses his job, but he needs to get it back because it controls all of the aspects in his life, like what he eats, what he drinks, what he reads, when he eats, when he sleeps, when he even like has sex, if he can have children, if he can, just everything in his life. And it's seriously wild, and it feels like a Black Mirror episode. And I mean that in the kindest way, because Black Mirror really does have unique premises that maybe aren't necessarily always executed in the most, I don't know, entertaining way or original way. But this was just seriously wild. So it's Jesse Plemons is leading this one as Robert, like I said, and then it's very Willem Dafoe focused, and Emma Stone kind of comes into it a little bit later. She's more the lead in story 2 and story 3. This is a really fun one, and I think it's the order that he put the 3 stories in is perfect. I would definitely start the movie with this one. It's the longest. It's kind of the more subdued of the 3. It's very like natural and feels very regular world. There's no supernatural elements, there's no cult well, kind of, but there's there's no like strict and overt cult aspects in this, whereas the other 2 are very, very different. And maybe I'll save a lot for spoilers, but yeah, so he loses his job. Like I said, this job gives him instructions of how to live it says he's an appraiser, like an auctioneer appraiser or something like that, but I think he's a hitman. That's what I was gathering from this. And he dresses like a hitman, like you can see in the trailer he looks like a hitman kind of. Even when he loses the job, he's still like going through everything that he would normally do while working. So it's a very interesting exploration of like comfort and routine, that we can be given all the freedom in the world after living this strict regiment, and we still find comfort in that strict regiment. And like I said, this was the longest of the 3, and I definitely did feel the length at the start. It takes a little bit to get going. I would say story 1 is maybe the one that struggles the most with pacing issues. That maybe is a fault of the film, because it is the first story and you want to kind of drop people in the heat of it. It does do that, but there's certain parts of story 1 that you feel it drag on a little bit and you're like, this doesn't feel necessary. But once it gets going because it gets very interesting, and I really enjoyed story 1. I think Jesse Plemons plays a very vulnerable and desperate character who's willing to do whatever is necessary to get his life back. I won't say what it is that he has to do, because that is a spoiler and leads to the whole kind of thing of the movie. All 3 stories are surprisingly very funny, but I think story 1 had some of my favorite gags in it. Like I was seriously laughing very hard at the first one. It's so weird, but there's just a couple of jokes in there that are so wonderful, and just the humor was seriously spot on in that classic like Yorgos way that I think only he really does in his films. Jesse Plemons, I feel like he doesn't get to lead in a lot of things that I have seen personally, but I really enjoyed him in this. I think he does a very good job leading this first story as this quiet, strange, desperate man who just wants, love and affection and comfort and control in his life. Even if it's not control from himself, he just knows what to expect. Yeah, just a very strange story that I've very much enjoyed. I think Willem Dafoe is good as his boss in this and as like a controlling person that he really plays in all three stories, but particularly in story one because it was the most natural and subdued. Okay, I'm going to move to story two now because there's just so much to cover and chew up in all of these stories. Story 2 takes a little bit more of a paranoid and supernatural turn, or not even supernatural, just like a more paranoid turn. So, like it says in the synopsis, Jesse Plemons plays Daniel, whose wife has been missing. He's a cop, and when she comes back, he just starts expecting that he starts suspecting that it's not her, and he's going crazy, and he's convinced that this is not his wife because whatever. There's just clues all over the place, and it's a very fun exploration of like, is he crazy? Is he not crazy? Is he right? Is he not right? This is where the whole movie, not just the story, Kinds of Kindness in itself, starts to really amp it up and take a really intense way. Whereas like the first one's just a fun ride of like, is this guy willing to go to the lengths? But story 2 is much more prying on your paranoia or trying to make you second guess yourself while you're watching. Again, I loved Jesse Plemons. In this one, I think he does seriously a great job as this paranoid husband who is seemingly going crazy, but we don't know if something's off, and I just liked his performance a lot in all three stories, but I think this one is where he really gets to play not more villainy, but like just more paranoid and gets to, I don't know, be a little bit crazy. Emily Stone, I loved her performance in this one. So she's playing this wife that comes back from being in like a plane crash, I think, is the idea. Or sorry, a boat wreck, because she's like a scientific researcher. And she's so strange in this story. She feels very alien-like. She feels like she's a robot inside of a human being trying to, I don't even know. It's just like the way she talks, the way she acts is so strange that you're second guessing yourself of like, wait, maybe he's right. Maybe she is like someone else inside of her body. Like, what is this weird paranoia that I'm kind of buying into as well? And I think this one of the three stories is maybe the least explained. Like, it leaves way more open-endedness and makes you think about stuff way more, if that makes sense. But first, Willem Dafoe plays Liz's dad, so that's who he is in this story. I just like in all three stories that people like, it's the same cast for all three stories, that he kept the cast small and we're just seeing these faces across three different stories. That was a really cool aspect for me. So Willem Dafoe plays Liz's dad. It's so weird seeing Willem Dafoe in just like average normal clothing. I'm so used to seeing him in some kind of funky gear, or he has some, I don't know, like a necklace or a monocle or a hat or something that's just like stands out in his outfit. But no, he's just in like jeans and a plaid shirt or a regular collared shirt. And it's so strange to see. It really threw me off. I was like, this is not Willem Dafoe. This is like, what have you done with Willem Dafoe, Yorgos? He does not look like Willem Dafoe. But yeah, he plays Liz's dad, who is a very smaller, like he's a small part of this story. He takes much more of a backseat in this one. And he's like trying to have some control and influence in the story, but he's, again, not a large part of it. This is much more a battle between Daniel and his own paranoia and Daniel and Liz. It's another story about love, control, and toxic relationships that sometimes make you the story is a little squeamish at times. This one was the most gross of the three, and it was a little hard to watch at times. And a lot of people in my theater were also like, oh, and you could hear reactions in the audience. Way more in part 3 for a certain thing that I'll get into in spoilers. But yeah, like I said, this one feels the most open-ended and unexplained, or just like leaves it to your interpretation a little bit more and makes you think about it when it ends, which I enjoyed. It felt like the most fast-paced of the three, even though it's not crazy stuff happening all the time. Like, there's a lot more deep thought and questioning in this one. I think it's the shortest of the three. It was really annoying last night. This guy in front of me kept timing the movie on his Apple Watch. He timed all three stories, and I was like, dude, really? Why? And it's his Apple Watch was so bright in the theater, and he's sitting in front of everyone. What could you possibly in your life need to time this all when it was actually a pretty full theater? Really annoying. Anyways, that's beside the point. But I really enjoyed the kind of the paranoid battle between the couple that stars in this one. That was something that was just really fun to see play out on screen, and I'll talk about more how it resolves itself and what this one means, because when the movie finished, I think I was thinking about number 2 the most, because I had the least amount of clarity about it when it ended, so I had the most questions about number 2 when it ended. So, but story 2 is still very fun. I think it's I think it's a good step up from story 1. And again, I really like the order that they put the stories into, because they just narratively, although they are very separate from each other, they make the most sense in this order. So I really enjoyed that. It was a lot of fun, as well as like the first one. This had very fun parts as well. But yeah, okay, so that's story 2. Let's get into story 3, because this is the one that was really bonkers, and I think it was my favorite of the 3. It feels the most concise. It's very well paced. Of the 3, I think it's the most well paced. It had all that I wanted. Once it ended, I had like no questions about the third one. I was like, okay, that perfectly encapsulated everything I wanted to know when the story ends. And it's very different from 1 and 2. It takes a much more overt cult aspect on it. Like you can see in the trailer, this Willem Dafoe is like this funky dressed dude in a crazy windbreaker. So Emily Stone is the lead in this one, I would say. She is much more the narrative focused of this one, with Jesse Plemons kind of her partner as they're investigating this girl that's supposed to have special abilities to bring people back to life, is the idea. That's not a spoiler. Like, I'm not revealing whether they find anyone or whatever. But after you watch the movie, if you go back and watch the clips that were released and the trailer, they actually show a lot of spoilers in the trailers, which I think they could have edited a little bit better to not show the most important parts of the movie. That was just really strange to me what they show, because you go into the movie, if you have seen the trailer, you go into the movie being like, oh, I saw all of this in the trailer. So if you're listening to the non-spoilers here, but you haven't seen the trailer and you're going to go see it, don't watch the trailer. That is my advice, honestly. I wish I went into this maybe only watching that first teaser and reading the synopsis. Again, this feels like a Black Mirror episode. Like, it's a weird sex cult type thing, but it just feels much more beautifully crafted than any Black Mirror episode, I would say. Perhaps that's tough on the first like few seasons of Black Mirror. I don't know. Black Mirror, like those first few seasons were lightning in a bottle and always presented these weird, I don't know, situations that people were in, these weird concepts and these weird, pickles that people had to put themselves in. And these 3 stories really reminded me of that, of these just like weird situations that no average person would ever be in, where it's a different world, types of, I don't know, jobs and relationships and stuff like that. Like everything is turned up to 11. So I really like that aspect. I like these other world stories where it's something just so unrecognizable to ourselves. But as weird as all of these people are, we really identify with them and we want them to succeed in certain ways, or at least the good people in the stories, even though, some of the people in the story are complicated and flawed, but you still see that perhaps what they're doing is just for their own safety, and you almost want them to win in the end, even though they're kind of, I don't know, they're all kind of strange, bad people. But yeah, I think story 3 was definitely my favorite of the 3. It was the one I was most intrigued by in the trailer, I would say, but also just the payoff in the movie itself. I was really enjoying story 3 altogether. Extremely concise. I love the cult theme. Emma Stone is just such a great lead for this story. Willem Dafoe plays another cult leader in this. I thought he nailed it. Jesse Plemons, really awesome. He's a little weirdo side character with his buzz cut. He's in his buzz cut era. He wears these sandals and sick clothing, and I loved all of that. I seriously loved part 3, and it takes on a very different tone from the first 2, maybe. I would say I liked part 3 the most because it just has the most voices and the most character dynamics in it. Like the first one is simply Jesse Plemons' character, Robert, with a few other people that he somewhat interacts with, but it's very much just focused on him. Part 2 is very Emily Stone, and Jesse Plemons focused. Like it is the two of them pretty much duking it out, and other people aren't as important. Maybe Margaret Qualley and Mamadou, what was his name? I can't remember, but those two are kind of involved. But part 3 just has the most characters and feels the most fleshed out of a world. Feels like we're really getting to see everyone's input, and it almost feels like there's like mini glimpses into the background of people, especially Emily Stone's character, Emily. You really get to know her life, which I enjoyed. And Taylor Swift's ex-fiance or whatever, Joe Alwyn, I've never seen him in anything, but he's in this. He's very good in this. He plays Emily's ex-husband, I guess. So there's a lot of character dynamics there because he's not in the cult. I don't know. It's just a very interesting dynamic and a very interesting life that she's living. And as you can see in the trailer, you see how crazy she drives, and it's so funny every time she drives like crazy. I'll get into spoilers on why that is, but just hilarious how she drives like an absolute maniac the entire movie. Like, she'll go to park the car and she'll literally do like a donut and a burnout into the parking lot and just slides into the spot like a stunt driver. And it's, oh my God, it's so funny. Yeah, part 3 was also very funny in parts, but I think it was maybe the most uncomfortable like vibes. It's not as gruesome as the second part, except this one part that I'll get into in spoilers. But overall, yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's really not much you can say altogether without spoiling. I think the trailers do conceal what happens in these movies very well, or these 3 parts very well, and the journey of them. But having watched the movie and then you go back and watch the trailer and you're like, oh, like the trailer kind of ruins or shows the major scenes in the trailer. You know what I mean? Like, there's someone in a wheelchair that is what one character is looking for. There's 2 characters kissing, and it just shows major plot points through the entire movie that I was kind of surprised about. I don't know. I just think like all 3 of these parts have very good humor and great acting. I love the dialogue. Like, it's not annoyingly meticulous like a Wes Anderson movie for me. It is just like super specific, but it adds to this kind of creepy, eerie vibes of this movie, if that makes sense. I don't know, I feel like that makes sense. Whereas when I watch a Wes Anderson movie, I just get frustrated because it's trying to be, I don't know what it is. It's just like the dialogue in those movies frustrates me because it's like trying to be a very art house. I don't know. I don't even know what I'm saying. Like, hipster is such an old-fashioned term, but that's almost what I think of when I watch a Wes Anderson movie, versus this just feels like the dialogue is so creepy. It all sounds like robotic and machine-like, and really throws me off. But look, I seriously enjoyed this movie. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I think just a couple of pacing and maybe bloating issues in a couple of parts are what pulled it back from a 4.5 or even a 5 for me. I think this is a very unique experience that you can get in the theater right now. I really enjoyed the movie for what the experience gave us, if that makes sense. Like, you get 3 different stories packaged into this one overall theme and discussion of, you know, love, abuse, control. What does it mean to live under illusions in your life, and what are you willing to do to maintain that illusion? The performances are seriously good. I think this is one of my favorite Jesse Plemons things since probably... Oh, actually, earlier this year in Civil War, he was awesome, and he was in one scene. The stories all, like I said, tell similar ideas, but in just very different ways, and I like the intensity kind of being turned up throughout the movie. Like, it feels like every story is building on the intensity of the last one, so I really like the order that Yorgos Lanthimos put them in, and it feels like a very inventive movie. I don't know, I don't want to overhype it, but it does feel very different to about 95% of what you would see in the theater right now. So I would recommend it. I mean, if you're someone that doesn't want to just watch the same exact movie every time you go to the theater, you want something a little different. I think if you like shows like Black Mirror or just kind of other creepy stories or kind of like cultish stories, I think this is a really cool movie to watch. If you liked Poor Things, I would recommend you see this because it's very much the same humor, of course, and it feels very much in kind of the same creative world. So I really just had a deep appreciation for how unpredictable it was. At no point did I know where the movie was going at any time. Like, I don't think if you gave me the first 30 minutes of each story, I wouldn't be able to tell you what the end. I did not know where it was going. And that's something I think everybody looks for in a movie. You just want to be in another world. I really didn't think about like time or anything while I was watching the movie. I was very deep into it, which is something that's, you know, a pleasure when you go to the theater and you're completely lost in the movie and you're not, you know, thinking about, wow, this must almost be done or whatever. You know what I mean? Okay, I'm going to get into spoilers now, so if you don't want to hear, skip ahead. There's timestamps underneath, as I said, but let's get into, I think there's a lot of spoiler stuff that you can really dive into, and I think once you see the movie, there's just so much discussion that can really come from this movie. And I have one Reddit post that I saw this morning that I really want to read kind of a little bit from. So in the trailer, it's the song Sweet Dreams, what's it called? Yeah, it's like Sweet Dreams, whatever, you know, sweet dreams are made of the blah blah blah. Well, every line of the chorus actually sums up each of the stories, which is interesting because I wondered like, oh, why'd they open the movie movie with that song. And then literally this morning, I'm going to write my notes for the show. And this user on Reddit posted Kinds of Kindness theme analysis on the r/Kinds of Kindness. And he said, I've seen a lot of critique that Kinds of Kindness doesn't offer a lot of terms of thematic depth. And although I do think the connection between the stories are intentionally not super important, I did find that each story had dramatic depth and aligns fairly well with the metaphorical nature of his earlier films. So some of them want to use you, some of them want to be used by you. In the first story, the film explores the toxic power dynamics between an employee and an employer. So that's Willem Dafoe's character and Jesse Plemons' character. The second one, some of them want to abuse you, some of them want to be abused. So the second story delves into the fantasies we create about people within relationships, especially when distance is involved. In this case, when someone goes missing, it examines how we often construct an idealized version of someone in our minds. When reality confronts this fantasy and the person doesn't align with our expectations, we might resort to interpersonal conflict or even abuse to force them into fitting that imagined version. And then finally, everybody's looking for something. So the third story explores the complex relationship between faith and community using a cult as a metaphor for organized belief systems. Faith can provide a sense of connection and community, but this comes at a cost. In the story, Emma Stone's character is punished and outcast for reconnecting with her family, which the cult manipulates as toxicity. Not to mention the fact that Jesse's character basically outs her because of his own affection for the cult leader. So really, like the three lyrics of that song, and that post is amazing. If you have Reddit, go on r/Kinds of Kindness. Amazing. I commented, I was like, dude, your commentary is mesmerizing, and I even commented saying that to his analysis, Jesse Plemons' character, even though he loses his lifestyle, he's still living the exact same lifestyle almost to a T after he loses the job because he enjoys the control. He enjoys the meticulous nature of his job and someone doing everything for him because it makes him feel loved and cared for. And all three stories are just stories about abuse, control, and toxicity, and sometimes enjoying control over yourself, but then other times how we inflict control onto others or how we try to take control of others because they're not fitting with our vision of them or our hopes of who they are. So it's just amazing that commentary from user Pocket Fart. So story one ending, and Robert explained he kills the guy that he originally backed out at the start of the movie. He said, I can't drive fast enough. I don't want to kill this person because his job is to get into a car accident with this person. So that's why he loses his job. So at the end of the movie, he breaks into the hospital and gets that person out that Emma Stone's character, who took his job, tried to kill. So he ends up killing them, and that's how he gets his job back. So, and it's just a lot of chaos there. But one thing I really loved in that story is how he got his wife's attention at the bar is he acted like his hand was hurt, and you see him try this again, and it's just like the most pathetic wailing and screaming. And so he has to try and get Emma Stone's attention, Emily Stone's character, and what he does is he just kicks the wall of the bathroom and literally breaks his foot. And Jesse Plemons, like his whole vibe in that first story is so funny. He just plays this, like, at first you think he's kind of I don't want to say pathetic, but you can see he's a very vulnerable and someone that is very passive and just looks for instruction in life. And by the end, he's just like taking matters into his own hand. He's doing what he needs to do, and it's kind of this journey of like control and discovery about himself. So he ends up back in the loving arms, and that's where you get that shot from the trailer where it's Margaret Qualley, him, and Willem Dafoe all cuddling in bed. It's just it's so odd. It's such a funny first story, but he really does take on like this new persona through the first story. Like you can see him changing, and it's just such a different vibe to him by the end, and he's willing to sacrifice his own morals for that loving control. Again, yeah, a really good first story. I don't know, the whole part, I think the part that was a little too slow for me is after he gets fired and he's just kind of wandering around his house looking for his wife, who also goes missing along with Willem Dafoe's character. So I think that part was maybe just a little bit slow for me, where we understand he's like, he doesn't know what to do with himself, but the fact that he's still doing all the things that he would have done in his job, I think already speaks to the fact that he doesn't know what to do with himself. He's just going to keep living like he is employed. So I could have gone with a little bit less of him just wandering around the house, and I would have liked just seeing the stuff of him going and doing what he would do in a normal day. All right, story 2, spoilers, let's get into that. So I think this is a very chunky one to get into because it leaves it a lot more open-ended. And like I said, it left me with a lot of questions. So Daniel, his wife is missing, and the woman that comes back is indeed his wife, is how I interpreted this. And that Reddit post really helped me make me feel like I wasn't crazy. It was very meta. He indeed is. He is delusional, and his wife comes back, and when he comes back, she's a different person. When she comes back, she is a different person. She is starting to eat chocolate, which she never did before. He has this like idealized picture of her in his head where she's like this super healthy, strict person with all this like really strict regimen. But then she survived on this island of dogs where dogs were in charge and humans weren't. And she's a very different person when she comes back, and he doesn't like that. He's crazy and abusive. He gets her to chop off her finger and fry it up, and he says he didn't eat it, but I think he did. I think he's actually a little nuts, because I think he is a cannibal, and we see that I'm pretty sure she ate flesh on the island is what it's insinuating, perhaps, that there's a cannibalistic kind of aspect to this. I don't know. The whole island things that are a gray and black flashback were a little crazy, so I don't know what is like actually true. She says she survived on chocolate and fruit, but like you see human flesh being eaten, so I would say she is a cannibal. So Daniel, his phone goes missing because Liz takes it and clearly hides it and sells it because, or maybe she doesn't. I don't know. I think she does because he's abusing her and she's trying to get out of this and maybe escape in some form or like rebel by taking his phone. Anyways, he tracks the phone when he's on duty as a cop. He pulls over this couple, one of them being Joe Alwyn, and he steps out of the car and Daniel shoots him in the hand, kind of goes nuts and starts licking the wound. And it's really odd. So that's when he gets laid off from the force. But I think that right there is where I pieced it that, oh yeah, okay, this guy is nuts and I think he is delusional. The end is that he says, I want you to cut out your liver and I want to eat it for dinner or whatever. Like, I need you to prove your love to me. And it's just really wild. So she does it, but she ends up dying. And the last scene of that story is that she knocks at the front door and it's her. So at first you're like, oh my God, she was a clone or whatever. But then you're like, no, I think Daniel is just kind of crazy and he was hallucinating and she didn't actually come back. But he just more metaphorically returned to that perfect vision of her that he saw when he opened the door. I think it's all happening in his head. He's hallucinating from all the, pills he's taking and stuff. So story 2, I really enjoyed as well. I do feel like it was the most, definitely felt like the shortest one. I wouldn't say it was concise. There were parts that on one hand, I like the open-endedness of it, but I think they could have gone into his, mentality and his hallucinations a little bit more. But Willem Dafoe even says, like, I know this guy isn't good for you, and she doesn't believe it. And you see that a lot in abusive relationships, like someone, a family or friend member, a family member or a friend will tell the person, hey, I think you're in trouble and I think you need to get out, but they don't listen because they can't see it themselves. Story 2, very good as well. Another great exploration of, abuse, control, love, power, and toxic relationships. But story 3 is really was my favorite. I think definitely the one that made me kind of cringe the most because Emily finds Margaret Qualley, one of the twin sisters, and you see it in the trailer. You see her in a wheelchair, and Emily is successful in finding the cult because the goal of this cult is to find this girl that is meant to be 29 years old, a specific height and weight. She is meant to have a dead twin sister, and she's able to bring people back to life. She finds Margaret Qualley's sister, the twin sister, who says, hey, my sister has these powers because I died once, blah, blah, blah. So she meets her at a veterinary clinic. So Emily Stone, to meet her and get her into the clinic, she finds a stray dog. She cuts its leg open, and that was so hard to watch. Everybody in my theater was like, oh my God, because it's terrible. I hate watching dogs get hurt in movies. I can't because of my dog. Yeah, very strange. So she goes in, she unwraps the dog's bandage later that night, and the cut is completely gone. So it's crazy. I really like this like prophet, storyline, cult, prophet, sex cult, where they're all in love with each other. And like I said, Jesse Plemons outs her that she has a daughter and an ex-husband. That's Joe Alwyn and the daughter. And one night they're staying in a motel in the same town. So she visits her ex-husband, who turns out is abusive. He drugs her and he rapes her. So you kind of understand that the cult for her is a sanctuary because she has love that she actually consents to and that she feels because she clearly doesn't love her husband. She's just drugged and raped by him the first night she's there. It's a very interesting power dynamic and another great discussion of abuse and toxic relationships, how one relationship can feel strange at first, but in fact, it's actually the more healthier of the two because there was an abusive past one. I really enjoyed talking about the movie, but I really do think this is a movie that people should just go and see because it's going to mess with your mind and you're going to be thinking about so much after. And there's just so much to talk about in it. It's overwhelming. Like, so much stuff happens. It's kind of crazy. But the ending of story 3, not only gets expelled from the cult, she's said that like she's dirty or she's contaminated or whatever because she is raped by her husband. So they cast her out. Remember, she already has met the prophetic girl that healed her dog. So she goes back with a scarf and says, oh, I just wanted to give you a gift and thank you so much for all the great stuff you did for my dog. And then she puts a needle in her neck and it literally poisons her, knocks her out or whatever. It finally makes sense why she drives like a maniac. It is all leading to the final scene of the movie. This whole time I'm watching story 3, I'm like, why is she driving like this? Why does she drive like a crazy stunt driver? Well, in the end, she has the prophet girl in her car and she's going to take her to the cult and she's like, oh my God, I'm going to be back in, blah, blah, blah. Like it's going to be magical. I'm back. And she's not looking at the road. She's looking at the girl in the car and she crashes and kills the prophet girl who flies through the windshield. And it's such a strangely funny final scene because I was laughing every time she was driving like a maniac. Like it just feels so out of place. Like, and then in the end, you're like, okay, it's because we were leading to this, and it's gonna be she's her own downfall because she's reckless. Yeah, it's just a very shocking end to the story. You think she's going to succeed, and you kind of feel good for her because you see she's been abused in her own life, and this cult is like a sanctuary for her. So I was actually hoping she would maybe get a victory. It was so strange cheering for a cult. I was like, I need these people to succeed. So Emily does well. One big question remains. Are these stories all connected? You would think at first that they aren't connected in any way, and it makes sense. Everybody's playing different characters, yada, yada, yada. Well, there's one major lying connection between them all. RMF. So there's 3 stories in this. One of them is RMF is dead, RMF is flying, and RMF eats a sandwich. And you're the whole time wondering who the hell is RMF. There's only one person in the first story that has a shirt tag that says RMF. So he flies in the first one, dies in the second one, is eating a sandwich in the third one. So RMF, here's my interpretation, is just like this omniscient narrator godlike figure that shows up in all 3 stories. So in the first one, he plays the person that Jesse Plemons' character is told to kill in the car accident. He's wearing a shirt that says RMF on it, and he doesn't die. That's when Jesse Plemons breaks him out of the hospital after Emma Stone's failed assassination attempt, and he runs him over with his Range Rover like 4 times or whatever. And in the second one, he plays a helicopter pilot that brings Liz back. And in the third one, he's the body that the prophet girl brings back to life with her powers. It's a freaky thing. And then there's a mid-credit scene, I want to say. I guess it's a post-credit scene, mid-credit scene, where he's just sitting at a shop eating a sandwich and his shirt says RMF and it has blood all over it. Yeah, my interpretation of that is just that he is this like character that is able to transcend all 3 stories and lives in all of the timelines all together, I guess. I don't know. It was really strange and I really enjoyed that. But look, here's my final thoughts on the movie, because there's just so much. It's seriously overwhelming how much you could talk about with this movie. Every scene has something insane happen. I really loved this. I gave it 4 out of 5 because I think it is just a solid movie, that I think if you watch it, especially in a group, I think there's so much discussion that can come from it. At 2 hours and 45 minutes, it is what would be considered a longer film, but it's because you get 3 stories out of it, and each story even has its own credits, like it shows who played who. It's almost like these mini vignettes or whatever it is. But I really loved this. I cannot wait for Yorgos's next project, which I believe is Jesse Plemons and Emily Stone again, where Jesse Plemons and someone else abduct Emily Stone's character because they think she is an alien. Really cool. I'm looking forward to that already. I would recommend seeing this if you're looking for more unique stories in theaters right now. If you're not wanting a recognizable IP or a franchise, you don't want to see A Quiet Place prequel, even though I see that's doing very well at the box office from what I can see, or it's getting a very good critical reception. So this is definitely something that if you don't mind kind of alternate strange movies, I would absolutely recommend Kinds of Kindness. But I have lots of other stuff to talk about in what else I watched. I guess this won't be a shorter episode, but nothing you can do. All right, so what else I watched for the week of June 23rd to June 28th, I guess. My friend and I watched Godzilla -1 last weekend. I had never seen it. I absolutely loved it. So cool. I really love the design of Godzilla, and it's just a very interesting story. I like the setting of it. I think like that World War II, post World War II is a very interesting time in Japanese history. So putting a Godzilla story there that, you know, kind of represents the atomic bomb, I really loved it. And I think the acting is solid. The CGI, most of it was pretty good. There was only a couple parts where I was like, ooh, you could tell there. But I mean, didn't it win the best visual effects at the Oscars? So I think Godzilla, amazingly designed, and I like the power up and the beam it shoots out. So that was seriously wicked. I would absolutely, it's on Netflix. I would absolutely recommend it. It is 2 hours and 2 minutes. It goes by so fast. There's an English dub if you need, and you can't do subtitles, so you can do English dub. But yeah, just a really solid Godzilla movie. Probably my favorite, definitely, I've ever seen. We also watched season 2 of Smiling Friends, which if you've never seen Smiling Friends, it feels like an acid trip. It is, not speaking from experience, but I imagine that's what an acid trip feels like, because it is the most ADHD crazy shit in the world. A really funny show though. I think I only saw season 1 like last summer or whatever. Yeah, season 2 is just as funny and even more crazy stuff happens. I also watched The Adventures of Superman, which voiced by Jack Quaid. If you don't know, I really liked season 1 last year. I thought I just like this version of Superman. He's young. He's not so depressed and stoic like Henry Cavill's Superman or a lot of Superman we get. He's just kind of young and naive and trying to figure it out and balance it all. And I like that Lois just knows he's Superman, and Jimmy. It just makes the story a lot easier. Season 2 is really cool as well because his cousin's in it, Kara El, as Supergirl. And there's been 6 episodes so far. I think it's going to be 8 or 10 in total. That's on Adult Swim, but if you have Amazon Prime and Stack TV in Canada, you can watch it there. In the States, it would probably be on like HBO Max, I would say, because it's Warner Brothers animation. But yeah, that's really great. I think Jack Quaid does a solid Superman. Like, he kind of has the same voice as both, but I really like this version of Clark Kent. And there's just a lot of cool stuff from the Superman lore that they bring into the series, and it's a perfect kind of appetizer to get ready for next year's Superman, because it's a fun Superman. Like, I feel like I liked Henry Cavill, but his movies are depressing as Superman, so this is a really fun one. What else? I'm gonna see Inside Out 2 again this weekend because my girlfriend hasn't seen it, so gonna go see that, which I liked. And I might try next week to see A Quiet Place Day 1 because I am seeing that it's getting decent reactions, so that feels like enough of a motivation to go see it. And I generally enjoyed the first 2, so like, why not? But yeah, that's about it for what else I watched. And I think that about does it for episode 24. And through the magic of podcast editing, you're actually not going to know when I left. And I went and got my shot. So my hip's frozen right now. Guys, that about does it for episode 24, Kinds of Kindness. I hope you see it. I didn't want to get too in the weeds and philosophical about it because there's just so much I think you should really go and experience for yourself, because it is just such an interesting, unique story. As always, if you could rate and review the podcast, you can share it with a friend, rate it 5 stars on all the platforms where you get your podcast, whether that be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or Acast. You can rate it 5 stars, text it to a friend, and share your favorite episode or a movie you both saw. It is summertime now, so get out to the movies, folks. We're also on YouTube, where you can like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you know every Monday when there's new podcasts coming out. And you can comment below what's your favorite horror movie. If you saw Kinds of Kindness, which of the 3 stories was your favorite? You can also email the show if you want to answer any of these, or you have any recommendations for the show. So that's watcherofallthings@gmail.com. You can email the show that way and get in touch. But we also have social media, so Instagram, that's Watcher of All Things on Instagram, and TikTok, so why not toss a follow on both of those, as well as subscribe to the podcast on all your streamers or on YouTube, whatever you get your podcasts on. You can also just follow my personal Letterboxd as well. I make lots of lists there. That's KikiJ70, KIKIJ70. You can see all my reviews right away on there. And yeah, so do all that good stuff. Get in touch with the show. Let me know your thoughts. What are you seeing this summer, or what are you excited? Movies to come out and TV shows. Are you watching The Bear? That's going to be next week. I've already binged it all, and I'll save my thoughts, of course. But I hope you have a lovely long weekend if you're in Canada. If not, enjoy your Monday at work, and I will see you in the next one.